This is like an antagonist character that you see in episode 1, but they have a slightly less pointy nose, a more gradual shape to it. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Doki Doki Drawing, and today is another episode of Style Man A. And I've got a question to start today's video off with. It's who knows what today's topic is? And the hint is right here. You might even say it's right under your nose. So that's why I'm looking today at a show called Demon Slayer. It's one of those things that I've always wanted to work harder on, but I've never really done my research and understood how to actually draw a nose on a character. Or rather, I haven't really looked into expanding upon the different ways to draw a nose on a character. All these features are staring you right in the face, and so if they don't all look right, then it's like the one that looks the worst is probably going to capture people's attention the most. The nose that you see on the characters in Demon Slayer are quite specific. One of the first things I'm noticing about the characters in Demon Slayer is that you do often get the lines for the nostrils of the character. You get a little bit of shading sometimes, and then you have these etched lines. I'm not 100% sure what these lines symbolize, but I'm going to try and learn a bit more by imitating, Mane. I'm going to imitate this style and try and understand a little bit more about it. The nose what we are most interested in, so just zoom in a little bit more here and just mimicking what I'm seeing on the noses in Demon Slayer. I'm seeing a couple simple lines for the nostrils, and sometimes even you see like a complicated set of lines. And then right here on the, I don't know if you call this the lowest part of the nose, or the part where the nose kind of sinks in shape, I noticed that they've got these lines here on the top. And then to finish things off, you see a bit of shading on the opposite side where the shadows are being cast on the face. So I'm going to have the shading here on the left side, like so. Now there are other characters too, like the sister character who has a simpler nose maybe, and she has maybe like one nostril here. She has the ridge, the bottom ridge of the nose here, and then maybe fewer of these shading lines on the top, but then also the shadow just like before, coming over like this. Now this is where the mystery starts to begin, because for this first nose that I've actually drawn here, it's not 100% clear to me whether this is actually a nostril or whether this is the bottom ridge of the nose. And if it's not clear what I'm talking about, it looks like there's a left nostril and a right nostril, right? But at the same time, when the characters are moving in and they're animated and you see them turning their heads, you often start to realize like they've turned their head to the side. And it turns out this line here is not actually the left nostril. This is actually the base of the nose. And so let's say you have a character facing to the side like this. You have the eyes like this, the mouth shape of the face. Let's have style and hair. What I find very intriguing about anime is how it's sometimes very difficult to tell whether this is a left nostril or whether it's the base of the nose. And when I was talking about the base of the nose, I'm actually talking about this part. So let's say that I was to draw a style of nose a bit more like this. This red part, actually, hold on, I'll draw it in a different color. This blue part that I'll color in here is what I think is this line over there. And I'll use a different color like green. This nostril here, the right nostril, I believe that that's what is going on over here. And so sometimes when I'm looking at anime and I'm trying to figure out like what is the style that they're using here, and you have to start watching the anime frame by frame to figure out which part is actually which. But the first time I saw this style of nose, I thought the left side is the left nostril and this right side is the right nostril. But even if it's not a bit longer. Like I've drawn it a little bit longer with the blue line here. Even if it's not actually longer, sometimes they're the same size, but they turn to the side and it turns out that that blue line there was actually the base of the nose. Now, since we're looking at this angled shot here, I'll just add in the hatched lines on the nose that I've seen in the show. I was saying earlier that maybe it's at the lowest part of the nose, but for example, let's say that the eyebrow comes down like this, it bends, and then it rolls up to the nose like this. The lowest part, I think, would be here. But the hatched lines that I'm seeing in the show, they actually sort of appear more like here on the, I don't know, the bumped up part of the nose, but at the lower, not at the very tip, not up here, but somewhere in the middle. So not here, but somewhere in the middle, like this. Now for the shading on this nose, obviously it depends on where the light source is coming from. But let's say that the light source is coming from the right side over here. You can sometimes get a shadow coming off the back of the nose, like this. But then other times you also see, like depending on the angle again, you also see like the shading just coming down like this, off the back of the nose. Now I find this type of shading particularly interesting because if this is a shadowed area, I thought by doing shading like this or on the other side, it kind of made the nose look like this. It was a triangle that only had, you know, the right side, but it was like missing the left side. I thought like I wanted to see this red portion as well. So sometimes if I look at a frame for too long, I'm like, well, technically, if that was an actual shape, then the shadow would assume that this red area just doesn't exist and that instead it's casting a shadow like this, flat. But I think what's actually happening over here is that because this is cast in shadow, it's just like, well, it's a dark area, there's no need to add in the details on the opposite side of the nose. And so really, from this angle, I feel like you only see this right part, this right side of the nose. Even though technically from this angle, you would also see a nostril here. It's a very common thing, it looks like, to not draw the other side of the nose, even though technically at this angle you would be able to see it. Just choose a couple different angles. I'll have one face going this direction. I'll have one face straight forward. I'll have one face looking outward in this direction. And then also maybe I'll have some faces looking away, down in this direction, maybe one down in this direction. All right, let me just finish a few of these. So I'll just finish a few of these faces and then I'll add some noses in a minute. Okay, so I've drawn some random heads here at different angles, and let's try adding some Demon Slayer style noses to them. So, these are the 5 faces that I've just tried to scribble out super quickly and experiment with the nose styles that I've seen in Demon Slayer. So starting here in the middle with the front-facing view, I feel like the main features I tried to bring in and internalize into myself so that I can use it in future designs is the main features, which are these 2 nostrils, these hatched lines for the shading where, you know, there's like shape on the nose, and maybe it's also just a characteristic design, make it really unique look. Because there's so much focus on an anime and manga on line art, I really feel like, especially for the nose, since there are actually so few lines, that 50% at least, or maybe even more of the nose really comes from where you put the shadow. We're not drawing every single contour of the nose to make it look like super realistic. Since we're not drawing all of these lines, it's like the shading really does the job of showing us what the contour of the face is without these, I think the word is these gaudy extra lines. Then moving over to this face here, facing to the left, went for this slightly pointier nose style that you see on the main character in Demon Slayer. You've got the roundness here on the ridge in the middle in between the eyes, and then coming out quite pointy shape for the nose itself. And something that you see a lot in Demon Slayer is leaving a gap here for the nose, and I think that does add a little bit of softness to the top of the nose. That's something you see in all sorts of styles, not just anime, of course. And then often you see, especially in Demon Slayer, maybe this is a UFO table thing because of the studio that does it, there's a lot of extra line thickness here. And then again, it might just be because that's how the original designer wanted it, the line thickness to be always varying and having that G-pen manga style look to it. You've of course got the etched lines here, and then the nostril on the left, and so this is the style that I've gone for, where you've only got one nostril and the bottom ridge of the nose, and then you don't have the nostril over here. Instead, what you've got is shading, which sort of gives us an idea of the height of the nose, and it's actually, high enough that it is casting a shadow onto the opposite side of the face. Then moving over here to another upward looking face, but to the opposite direction, I went for the other style of nose. This is like an antagonist character that you see in episode 1, but they have a slightly less pointy nose, a more gradual shape to it, but also using that gap at the top of the nose for that softness, having a nice round shape coming down here. And then you actually see this line extend down into the top lip, and then just one very simple line here for the nostril on the opposite side. Last but not least, got a few of these etching lines here. Again, I'm not 100% sure what the purpose of them is. Could just be to make the design more unique, but then it might also just give you a sense of shadow dropping on the nose. I'm curious, I might have to ask Hinoe, the professional animator, in a future video. I'll be like, what are these hatched lines for? And he'll probably be like, doesn't mean anything. That's my prediction. Now moving over here to the face in the bottom left, I've got a character that is looking downward, and I used I think it's one of the villain sort of monstrous characters, so I had added more of these angry creases in between the two eyes. You get a little extra creases the more angry you are. Thick, sharp, pointy nose with the hatched lines. Again, it looks like every character gets these hatched lines. It's very much a mark of the creator of this. And this line here is detached, but it does come down. It's the line that connects the nose down to the upper lip. And then a very simple line here for the nostril. And because the shading, I've done all the shading in green for these, since the shading is on this side, you actually don't get a sense of how much this nose is casting a shadow on the opposite side, because the shadow's here on the near side. And then last but not least, again, another face looking down but into the opposite direction, went for the main character's nose again. So it's pointy. I think I could have made it a little bit longer, but I just didn't. And this time I've actually gone for the style where the top of the nose isn't disconnected, because you do see sometimes on the illustration style that they do actually close this up. So it's, they just mix it up every now and then. When they want a softer look, they'll have a gap here. But this time I went for the complete closed line look for the whole nose, and it's got quite an interesting shape. It's got a round bend here, but then sharp line here, and then another round bend. It's kind of hexagonal almost in this zone here. You can imagine a little hexagon shape. You've got the hatched lines again, but interestingly enough, I feel like on this one that I was imitating, the hatched lines just gradually angle off, so they're not always parallel, because I feel like in this one here, there are very, very parallel lines. They're all going in the same direction. But on this one, you sometimes see the hatched lines slightly tailing off until they're a little more flat. Got the left nostril here, and then finally, we've got the shading. So like I was talking about earlier in the video, when you've got the shading on the opposite side, you just don't see the nostril that might actually be visible. Physically speaking, I think you might actually be able to see the nostril over here, but they just omit that and they just leave you with the shading. That's plenty. It's dark on that side, you don't need to see what else is going on. Finally, just to give you an idea of what this would look like if the faces were colored in, I'll just remove the blue layer here, and this is kind of what they would look like finished. So that is basically it for today's episode. I'm not an avid watcher of Demon Slayer, but now that I have had a closer look at the style of these noses, I am tempted to watch a few more episodes and get into the show. And it's always nice to see how other animators are dealing with the nose. You don't always have to go for a realistic style, and you don't always have to go for a simple tiny dot with a little bit of shading. There's so much area in between in the middle. You know, we have a slightly more realistic style when you're looking diagonally, or maybe when you're looking straight forward, you've got nothing but a couple nostrils. And then in the case of Demon Slayer, adding these hatched lines in the middle, right on the top of the nose. And it might be a little difficult to see here, but I've tried to vary the line weight to give it that manga G-pen feel. One of the really interesting things that I feel like I've discovered today and want to practice more is using shadow, not to carve out the exact shape of the nose, but to, I don't know if the word is allude to the idea of the nose. And it's like, okay, it's soft here, there's a low area here, there's a high area here, there's obviously undulation of the face using the shadow. But let us know in the comments below, what other styles would you be interested to see? Is there a very interesting kind of nose that you'd really like to explore? We'd love to hear your suggestions so that we can check out all sorts of other styles and I can really level up my game by incorporating different styles from different creators all through the world of anime and manga. Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to check the playlist where there are plenty of other videos where I'm checking out all the other styles of other TV anime shows and incorporating those styles into my own character, which is Style Man A. Be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. We'll see you around.